Thank you all. And thank you to Secretary Pompeo for those overly generous words. Mr. Secretary, as one of your predecessors, Henry Kissinger, once said, after that overly generous introduction, now even I'm interested in what I have to say. And mentioning my friend, let me just take a moment to give you all a chance to show your appreciation for a man who's fought for America all of his life. He served in uniform, he served in the Congress where we first met, he led the Central Intelligence Agency, and now I can assure you he is making this president and all of America proud as the 70th United States Secretary of State. Would you join me in thanking Secretary of State Mike Pompeo for his great leadership of this department and in this country? To the more than 180 ambassadors and chiefs of mission here today, as well as the under and assistant secretaries in attendance, it really is an honor to join you for the 9th Annual Global Chiefs of Missions Conference. Welcome back to Washington, D.C., and welcome home. It's great to have you back. You know, because all of us are, in fact, one team with one mission and one future, let me begin today by bringing greetings from our one-team captain, someone who admires the service that each one of you provide to the United States of America every single day. I bring greetings from the 45th President of the United States of America, President Donald Trump. You know, I look around this room and I see so many noteworthy Americans. In fact, some of the most talented and experienced professionals who work every day for our country. You are our frontline emissaries, and I just want you to know that this president, his vice president, and our entire administration take the job that you do, the commitment that you live out, as seriously as each and every one of you do, and we are grateful. We truly are. And as all of you know, you're representing our country around the world at a momentous time in our history. With the help of Secretary Pompeo, President Trump has made some big changes in our nation's foreign policy. And they were a long time coming. And they haven't been welcomed in all quarters around the world. So I'm here today to say thank you to each and every one of you for taking up the hard work of defending the interests of some 320 million Americans. The President's foreign policy, as you all know, put simply, is America first. No longer will the United States government pursue grandiose, unrealistic notions at the expense of the American people. Instead, President Trump is putting our nation's security and prosperity first, and he always will. That's the vision the President laid out in our national security strategy a little more than a year ago. It's a strategy, as you know, based upon 4 overarching principles, and they bear repetition today. First, protecting the American people, the American homeland, and the American way of life. And we're doing that by enhancing our defense against weapons of mass destruction, combating biothreats and pandemics, and strengthening our border security. The second pillar is promoting American prosperity. And on that score, we've been rejuvenating our economy. We're also promoting free, fair, and reciprocal economic relationships, maintaining America's lead in research, technology, invention, innovation, and embracing American energy dominance. The third pillar of the President's strategy is advancing America's influence in the world. And we're encouraging our aspiring partners, working toward better outcomes in multilateral forums in every way we can. We are championing American values. And the fourth and final pillar of the President's national security strategy, as you well know, is to preserve peace through strength. And we're doing that with strong support in the Congress of the United States by renewing our military capability, strengthening our defense and industrial base, modernizing our nuclear forces, and even creating a space force as we strengthen cyber, space, offensive, and defensive capabilities. We are going to make the strongest military in the history of the world stronger still. It is an ambitious strategy, but as you all know, America first does not mean America alone. And over the past 2 years, under President Trump's leadership, we've forged new and renewed bonds with allies and partners in Europe, in Asia, and across the world. We've also been building on our own country's strengths and encouraging other countries to do the same. We recognize that a strong and prosperous America will help secure a world of independent and sovereign nation-state, each free to develop their own culture, pursue their own dreams, with all of us living side by side in peace and security. And there's no doubt this president's foreign policy is different from what the world has come to expect. But then the world itself has changed dramatically since the fall of the Soviet Union. Today, we're not up against one superpower, but several great powers competing with us for preeminence across the world. China, as we've observed, is using debt diplomacy and unfair trade practices to expand its influence. And as I made clear on that visit to the region just a few short weeks ago, the United States will always stand for a free and open Indo-Pacific where all countries can enjoy freedom of navigation and open trade. The truth is, too often in recent years, China has chosen a path that disregards the laws and norms that have kept the world safe and prosperous for more than half a century. And the days of the United States looking the other way are over. And then beyond our global competitors, the United States faces a wolf pack of rogue states. First, there's the world's biggest state sponsor of terror, which is grappling for dominance in the Middle East by spreading mayhem in any country that opposes it. Of course, I speak about the Islamic Republic of Iran. Then there's the specter of dictatorship, which haunts the people of Cuba, Venezuela, and Nicaragua, defying world opinion and Latin America's broad embrace of freedom, democracy, and the rule of law. And while the president has started a promising dialogue with Chairman Kim, we still await concrete steps by North Korea to dismantle the nuclear weapons that threaten our people and our allies in the region. Unlike the Soviet Union and its many client states, no shared ideology or objective unites our competitors and adversaries except this one. They seek to overturn the international order that the United States has upheld for more than half a century. Truthfully, it is a pact surrounding what they perceive to be a common enemy. But the truth is, the United States will rise to that challenge. We will stand with our allies, and we will advance our values and our principles in the world. The truth is, when the president took office, he saw a world that, in too many respects, was complacent, had looked the other way for too long, had not marshaled the energy to stand strong together, advocating for our interests around the world and those of our allies who shared our values. It seemed as many across the Western world were simply managing to climb. But I think you all know President Trump is not a big fan of losing. He knew the only way to retake the initiative was to put our own house in order. And so from the first day of this administration, we have focused on revving up this economy. We've cut taxes. We've cut red tape. We've unleashed American energy. And I'm pleased to report, thanks to the president's leadership and the energetic development of businesses large and small, we've seen more than 5 million new jobs created across the United States of America. And as I mentioned before, we're rebuilding our military, making the largest investment in our national defense since the days of Ronald Reagan. And under the president's leadership, The United States of America is once again standing tall and standing proud, not just at home, but around the world. We've gotten our allies to contribute more to their self-defense. We're building trade relationships that are free, fair, and reciprocal. We've taken decisive action to secure our border as well, to stop the flow of illegal immigration, crime, and drugs at our southern border. You know, it would be helpful for all of you to recount when you return to your duties what the President noted earlier today. That, as he said, that there are today 77 major or significant walls built around the world. In fact, over 800 miles of walls have been built in Europe since only 2015. Rest assured, each of you have a role to play as we take the battle forward on Capitol Hill to secure our border. You should make it clear to our allies around the world that the United States supports legal immigration. In fact, we celebrate it. And America has a proud record of support for refugees. But as the President has often said, a country without borders is not a country. And so I urge you to assure our allies this administration will continue to stand for legal immigration, even while we address the humanitarian and security crisis on our southern border. We will secure the border of the United States of America for the sake of our people, our security, and our sovereignty. You know, it's the truth of the matter is it's not under this president's leadership that we're attempting to play catch up. It's that the truth is that we believe that together with all free nations around the world, that we can do so much more. You know, the President and I have traveled widely and often with the help of all of you in this room. We've done the hard work of sustained personal diplomacy. In the last 2 years alone, I've had the honor to represent our country on visits to 23 different countries on 6 different continents. And as the President might say, the change in the relationship between the United States of America and our allies and our competitors around the world has been huge. I mean, the truth is, just look at trade. Under President Trump's leadership, we've helped our farmers and ranchers sell more American rice to Colombia, more American pork to Argentina, and more American grain to Vietnam. We're negotiating a first-of-its-kind trade deal with Japan. We've strengthened our trade deal with South Korea. We signed one of the largest trade deals in American history when the President will soon take to the Congress the United States-Mexico-Canada agreement that puts American workers and American jobs first. But as I mentioned before, perhaps most importantly, we've put China on notice. President Trump's direction, we've placed tariffs on $250 billion of Chinese goods, with the highest tariffs specifically targeting the advanced industries that Beijing is attempting to capture and control, the high parts of the modern economy. As the President's made clear, the United States is prepared to levy even more tariffs until China makes much needed structural changes and signs a trade deal that works, not only for their nation, but for ours. And we remain hopeful. We remain hopeful that China will come to the table. Even as negotiations take place as we speak, that China will come to the table and finally enter into a fair and reciprocal trade relationship. The truth of the matter is, we also need a better relationship with China and understand our relationship across the Indo-Pacific. We've all seen the aggressive efforts in the South China Sea by China. But the United States of America, as I said before and I say again, will continue to stand with nations across the region for a free and open Indo-Pacific and for freedom of navigation on the 7 seas of the world. That strong stand is resulting in dialogue and in progress, not only with China, but with nations around the world. And what's more, some of our greatest challenges, some of our most heinous enemies are in retreat. We promised under this President's leadership to take the fight to radical Islamic terrorists on our terms on their soil. The President and I couldn't be more proud. Thanks to the leadership of this Commander-in-Chief and the courage and sacrifice of our armed forces, We're now actually able to begin to hand off the fight against ISIS in Syria to our coalition partners, and we are bringing our troops home. The caliphate has crumbled and ISIS has been defeated. Now, we'll stay in the region and we'll stay in the fight to ensure that ISIS does not rear its ugly head again. We will protect the gains that our soldiers and our coalition partners have secured. But this president has often spoken about his desire to bring an end to endless wars in America and the ability to bring our troops home, to bring them home in an orderly and an effective way out of their current deployment in Syria remains a priority for this president. This president also promised to stand up to the Iranian regime. As we stand today, Iran is now under unprecedented pressure to change its ways. Many of you in this room have helped to spread our message, and we couldn't be more grateful. The message that the disastrous nuclear deal benefited the very mullahs who oppress their people. And even as we've striven mightily to protect our most important interests, we've also fought hard. We've also fought hard not only to stand up to those who would challenge us, but to advance American values on the world stage. You know, here in this nation, we cherish the ideals of our founders. We've long held the belief that those ideals and values that we cherish are not just our birthright, but they're the birthright of all mankind. Because the founders of this nation believed and enshrined that all men and women are created equal, that we're endowed by our Creator with certain unalienable rights: life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And as well, we've championed those values around the world. And I couldn't be more proud, as the President is, of the efforts each one of you have done to advance freedom of speech, freedom of the press, and our first freedom, the freedom of religion. Let me assure all of you gathered here today, protecting and promoting religious freedom is a foreign policy priority of this administration. With the support of all of you in this room, we've stood without apology with persecuted people of faith around the world, whether it was calling for the release and achieving the release of a Christian pastor in Turkey, or speaking out for oppressed Tibetan, Buddhist, and Muslim Uyghurs in China, or helping to rebuild Christian and Yazidi communities in Syria and in Iraq. America has stood for religious freedom and religious plurality around the world. It's especially noteworthy today, on this National Religious Freedom Day, that we speak of the great progress that our nation has made. But let me say to each one of you, our ambassadors and our emissaries around the world, let us rededicate ourselves to that first freedom. As you return to your post, you may communicate to our allies and all who would listen that this administration and this people will always be a champion of people of faith. We also have stood strong for the right of people to elect their leaders freely. We've imposed tough new sanctions on Nicolas Maduro's sham of a government. Just this week, we unequivocally condemned the arrest of Juan Guaido, the president of the National Assembly, after he invoked protections under Venezuela's constitution and declared Maduro's presidency illegitimate. I spoke with Juan Guaido just yesterday. I told him the United States will continue to stand strong with the people of Venezuela until democracy and liberty are restored. And for all the changes in administration policy, for all the changes in world affairs, the United States of America remains what we've always been. To millions around the world, that shining city on a hill. As the 40th President of the United States once said about that city, and I quote, "After 200 years, 2 centuries, she still stands strong and true on the granite ridge, and her glow has held steady no matter what storm." You are those that help shine that light from the shining city. And the truth of the matter is we wouldn't be able to defend this city. We wouldn't be able to share the values and the priorities of that city on a hill without the people in this room. You know, I've traveling around the world, and in my years on the Foreign Affairs Committee, I have a pretty good idea how hard of a job it is that each one of you have. We know how difficult it is to be a truth teller, to have the tough conversations with some of our closest friends and our competitors around the world, to call out adversaries so often when other nations are unwilling or stand silent. In the last 2 years, you've done so much for our country, and the President and I couldn't be more grateful. But before I leave today, I want to ask all of you one more favor. When you go back to your missions, I want you to deliver a message to everyone you meet, friend and foe alike. And don't just use words. Tell them by always showing up, standing your ground, carrying yourselves with confidence worthy of free men and women. Tell them America is back. We're back on the world stage to advance America's interests. We're back on the world stage to forge stronger ties with those nations around the world who share our ideals and our principles. And we're here to stay. Now, not everyone will be thrilled to hear this message. But you know, as I think of your situation, my mind actually goes back to our first minister to the court of St. James, John Adams, who also happened to be the first vice president of the United States. Now, not too long after he'd taken up that post, I'm told that he brought his friend Thomas Jefferson to a reception of the King of England's, where they were both quite pointedly snubbed by His Majesty. It must have been terribly frustrating for them. But then, how could they have expected anything different? By their very presence, they were announcing that things were changing in the world, that there had been a major shift in world affairs. Their presence there in the court of St. James was proof positive that democracy was on the march, that no empire, however strong, could conquer a people yearning for freedom. And so just remember their example. Remember every time you find yourself in an awkward situation around the world that you've been in good company from the very founding of this country. And remember that by your very presence out all across the world, you represent not only the interests, but the values and the ideals of 320 million American citizens. And you represent our way of life. It's a heavy burden, no doubt. But the President and I know you're up to it. And I know none of you would have it any other way. So to all the ambassadors, chiefs of mission, dedicated Americans who are here today, as you prepare to return to your post, let me extend to you the gratitude of the President of the United States, of his Vice President, and to no less extent the American people. And as a grandson of an Irish immigrant to this country, let me maybe send you off with an Irish prayer from my heart. And I know it would be a prayer prayed by millions of Americans if they were standing here today. As you return to your duties in those far-flung places in the world in which you've been called to serve, I pray, may the road rise to meet you. May the wind always be at your back. May the sun shine warm upon your face. May the rains fall soft upon your fields. And until we meet again, may God hold you in the palm of his hand. Thank you for your service to the United States of America. God bless you, and God bless America.